So welcome back students in this series of Express.js. Now in the previous video we have discussed about how to install Express.js and how to create a sample Express.js project. Now in this video we will discuss about this request and this response object that we passed in the callback function of a Express or node routing. So the Express.js request and the response objects are the parameters of the callback functions which is used to express applications. Now if client is sending some kind of request to the application or to the server, so the data with that application will be stored in that particular request object. So this request and response object is by default predefined, which is provided to the function by the node server. Now this request object will carry all the data that is sent from the client to the user, and this response object will contain the data that will sent from the server to the client. Now let me just open my Visual Studio Code and show an example to demonstrate this request and response object. Now in the previous video we have discussed about we have created a Express app and sent a simple string to the client. So let me just again execute this. Now let's check the output of this in the browser. For this let me open my localhost 8088. Now this is the output we are getting. Other than that simple string files, we can also send HTML files. Now for example, let me create a sample HTML file. So let me create sample.html and just put some sample tags in this HTML file. So let me create a h1 tag and create this is the first heading tag. Now second, let's write h5 tag, which is this is the content. So I have created a sample.html file and created a h1 tag and h5 tag to demonstrate that how to send HTML file back to the client as a response. So we can also send HTML files as a response to the client. Now in this we have to send the path. In this response.send we have to send the path. Also we don't use response.send in that case, we will use response.send file because we are sending a file to the client. For that we will use response.send file. So that is how we can use the response object. Now let's add the path. So adding the path, we have to demonstrate, we have to mention the base directory path, which is my web project. So which can be distinguished, which can be different in all the cases. For that we have a generalized object which is known as dir name. So this directory name is basically used to fetch the current directory name, which is my web project in this case. And this code will execute globally. So for that we have to add a slash, because every time we require something we have to add a slash in that. Then we'll pass that file name, which is sample.html. Now if I render this file, if I call that particular function, so it will automatically return me that sample.html file. If I just refresh this, so you can getting this sample.html file. This is the first heading tag and this is the content. So this is how, with this help of this response object, you can send some kind of files. Now with the help of this request object, you can also fetch some kind of data. For example, if I open my Chrome browser and let me call my localhost and some kind of data. For example, so if I put name equals to Kuldeep, and if I put and age equals to 45 and city equals to Mohali. So this is the data I am sending from my client to the browser. So now if I want to fetch this data, so I have to just get this data. So we'll write down response.send, we'll write down welcome. Now I want to fetch the name, so we'll write down welcome req.query. So the data which we send from client to the server is always fetched from the request. So we'll write down request.query, and in this request.query I have my name, so I'll write down dot name. So let me save this and then we'll write to the website. Let's save this, execute this code once again, server. Now if I send this request, you can see the output. If I click on this, so it will say welcome Kuldeep to the website. Also let's pass this age and city. So we'll write down, now after this I'll write down please confirm your age is equals to, from here we'll write down request.query age. After this, let's say what is the WH weather in the. Now here I want to mention the city name, so I'll write down request dot query dot city. So this is how it will work. Also, let me refresh this, and now let's get the output. So you can see, welcome Kuldeep to the website. Confirm your age equals to 45, and the what is the weather in the Mohali right now. Now, also there is another way of doing that. So we can do request.query dot city. So we can do it like this. As this request.query is basically JSON object, and we can fetch JSON object data like this also. So we have discussed this in the JavaScript module, that we can also fetch JSON request with the help of this dot and with the help of this square brackets also. So let control save, and also let's recheck the output whether it is correct or not. So now let's initiate a next query, localhost 8088, and in this let's pass name equals to Sanjeev and age equals to 20 and city equals to Ambala. Let's save this. So now you can get the output. Welcome Sanjeev to the website and confirm your age equals 20. What is the weather in the Ambala? So this is how we can use request and response object. So request object can be used to get data from the client, and response object can be used to send some kind of data to the client back from the server. So this is how we can use request and response object in the Express.js. Now in the node module, I have created a form to fetch some kind of data from the server. So let me copy that form. Also, let's discuss how to fetch data from that particular form. So we have created this form and fetch the data from this form in the Node.js. Now we'll do the same task in the Express.js, and also we'll discuss how to fetch this get and the post request as well. So let me open my browser, and also let's first of all change the port. So we are using the port 8088. Let's save this. Now I'll do this in a separate file. So I'll write down app.listen over here. Now also I have to create an extra routing. So in this routing, we'll just response.send file. So we'll send the file for the default routing. So when the user can open our website, so by default that login form will appear. And from that login form, when the user requests something, then after we'll trigger this routing. Now this is sample.html on the default routing we have. After default routing, we have a app.get. Now let's say make this routing /data. So save this. Also we have to pass /data over here. Save this as well. Now from that particular form, in this form we have three fields: name, age and mail. So I'll fetch this. We have name, we have age, so just we have to define this mail. So we'll write down mail over here, and let me define this. Please confirm your mail equals to done. Now let's save this. So here I have created two routings basically. One is the default routing, and that default routing will host this sample.html file. Then we have the data routing, and that data routing will host this string that we are getting from the request and from this sample.html form. Now let's save this and check the output. So if I open this, so if I call the default routing for 8088, here I am getting this form. After filling this form, so let me fill, let's say Ganesh, age 23, and mail ID ganesh@gmail.com. Let's submit this, and now you can see the data over here. So welcome Ganesh to the website. Please confirm your age is 23. Please confirm your mail ID is ganesh@gmail.com. So this is how, with the help of a form and with help of second routing, and also you can see that particular data we are getting is not on the default routing but on the data routing. So we have created two routings over here. One is the default routing that is serving the form that you can see. The default routing, let me show you once again. So the default routing is serving the form, is hosting the form, and if I put some data over here, so this will go to automatically this data routing along with the data we have passed and then we have fetched the data and passed it to the again back to the client with the help of the response. So now we have two methods, get and post. So we have discussed the get method, which is used to send some data. The data is shown up in the URL. Post method also. So the post method requests are used to send large amount of data because the data is sent in the body and the data is not sent via the URL. The data is sent with the help of the body. Now if you want to work with post data, so if I work with this post data, so you can see the data is not posted or the data is not sent from the client. So if I just open this and if I just localhost 8080, now if I put some data over here, you can submit. So you can see the data is not in the URL, but it is in the body. So now in Express, how to fetch the data from the body? Let us discuss that. We have to require where body parser. So we'll write down where body parser. So basically body parser is the module which is used to parse or to fetch the data from the body. Now to use this body parser we have to install this also. So we will install this. We'll write npm install body parser. So in the post request the data basically comes in a encrypted form. So we have to fetch the data from the body parser and then we also have to decrypt this. So for that we have to do where URL encoded parser. So you can name this like anything else. So that is just for reference. So I'll write down body parser dot URL encode. Now in this URL encode you have to pass an object which is extend false. So by default this is true. We have to just make it false, for example. Now this is a sample format for this. You have to install the body parser, then you have to require this, then you have to parse the URL encoding parser. Now we don't have to use this app.get request. So for that let's comment this out and create a new app.post for that. Now the app.post will have three things. First of all the URL, just remove this dot from here. First is URL, then we have the encoder which is URL encoding parser. So for that let's pass this in the post. Now after this we have to pass a callback function with the request and response. So now when we send data inside the body, so let's fetch that data and create a object from that. So let's create that object response equals to. Now getting the data from the body is quite simple. We just have to mention the name. Let's enter the name. Then we'll say request dot body dot name. So we have three things: name, age and mail. So let me copy this. Then we'll have age. So we'll write down request dot body. We are not doing request.query, but we are doing request.body because we are using the post request, and the post request the data comes under the body. So we'll write down request.body.age. Then we'll have mail. So we write down request.body.mail. Now let's save this and check the output. So for that let me just send this to the client. So we'll see whether the data is fetched or not. So for that we have to send this response, but we cannot send this response directly. As you know, we have to convert this JSON object into the string. So we'll write down JSON dot stringify, and in this JSON dot stringify we have to pass the response. So we have passed the response in this. Now let me execute this. Also we have the app.listen on this, and the routings are all set. Now let's just execute this. Now let me open the localhost. So in the localhost we have our, we are getting an error, index.js file. Now the localhost, we are getting the form. If I send some data, let's say Murthy, age 46, murthy@gmail.com. If I submit this, so you can get the data over here in the JSON format. So this JSON format is basically converted to the string and then sent back to the client in the form of a simple string. Now, so this is how we can send some kind of data to the client with the help of response, and also we can fetch the data from the client in the body, that is the data is passed in the body with the help of post method with the help of body parser module. So for that we have to install the body parser module and send the data. So this is all about the request and response. Also we have discussed the get and post method of Express.js. In the next video we'll discuss about cookies and sessions. So thank you for watching this video.